9. Lindsay Clancy and the Tragedy in Duxbury, Massachusetts, 2023. The crime in Duxbury. On the evening of January 24th, 2023, emergency responders rushed to a home in Duxbury, Massachusetts, following a chilling 911 call. When police arrived, they discovered 3 small children, Cora, 5, Dawson, 3, and Callan, 8 months, unconscious and showing signs of strangulation. Nearby, their mother, Lindsay Clancy, had jumped from a second-story window in an apparent suicide attempt. She was critically injured but survived. Despite desperate life-saving efforts, Cora and Dawson were pronounced dead at the hospital. Baby Callan was placed on life support, but died days later. Investigators quickly concluded that the children had been strangled with exercise bands, and the only suspect was their mother. Authorities alleged that Lindsay had carefully planned and carried out the killings before attempting to end her own life. The case horrified the local community and gripped national media. Clancy, a 32-year-old labor and delivery nurse, was described by friends and neighbors as a loving mother and devoted wife. Just days earlier, she had posted pictures of her children smiling and playing. Her sudden transformation from caregiver to killer left everyone struggling to understand what had gone wrong. Lindsay was arrested and charged with 3 counts of murder and strangulation, even as she remained hospitalized for serious spinal injuries. As the fact emerged, her defense would center on a chilling and increasingly common explanation: postpartum psychosis. Lindsay Clancy's background. Lindsay Marie Clancy was a well-educated and respected nurse. Born in 1990, she earned her degree from the Massachusetts General Hospital Institute of Health Professions and began a career in labor and delivery nursing. She lived in Duxbury with her husband, Patrick Clancy, and their 3 children. Friends, co-workers, and family describe her as warm, intelligent, and attentive to her children's needs. On social media, she often shared photos of her young family, projecting an image of happiness and domestic stability. There were no signs of violence or neglect. By all public measures, Lindsay was a model mother. Privately, however, Lindsay had been struggling with severe postpartum depression, a condition that worsened after the birth of her 3rd child, Callan. According to her husband and later court testimony, Lindsay had expressed troubling thoughts in the weeks leading up to the tragedy. She reportedly believed she was a bad mother and began to exhibit symptoms that went beyond typical postpartum depression, including paranoia, dissociation, and hearing intrusive thoughts. She was under treatment and had seen multiple health professionals. Her doctors had prescribed a cocktail of medications, including benzodiazepines, antidepressants, and antipsychotics. Her husband, Patrick, claimed that the medical system had failed her by overprescribing drugs that worsened her condition rather than treating it effectively. This section highlights the dual image of Lindsay, the accomplished nurse and doting mother, an increasingly unstable woman overwhelmed by a mental health crisis that escalated into tragedy, the descent into psychosis. In the months before the killings, Lindsay Clancy's mental health deteriorated rapidly. Following the birth of her 3rd child in 2022, she began exhibiting classic signs of postpartum depression, but her symptoms intensified to include psychotic features. Medical experts define postpartum psychosis as a rare but dangerous mental illness that affects 1 to 2 out of every 1,000 mothers after childbirth. Lindsay became withdrawn, anxious, and fearful. According to Patrick Clancy, she expressed feelings of worthlessness and detachment from reality. She began researching ways to cope with intrusive thoughts and reportedly asked her psychiatrist if it was possible to accidentally hurt her children. She was placed on medical leave and began intensive outpatient therapy. Between October 2022 and January 2023, Lindsay was prescribed over a dozen psychiatric medications, including Seroquel, Klonopin, Zoloft, and Trazodone. Her husband later stated that these drugs made her more disoriented and emotionally numb, a claim echoed by the defense team. Lindsay's lawyer argued that her mental state was chemically altered and deteriorating under the pressure of parenting 3 small children with inadequate medical supervision. In the final week before the killings, Lindsay allegedly became fixated on religious thoughts and developed delusions about protecting her children from future suffering. The day of the tragedy, she asked her husband to pick up dinner at a restaurant, a calculated move that gave her the window of time needed to act. This section outlines Lindsay's spiral, into postpartum psychosis and the medical and psychological factors that contributed to her actions, legal proceedings, and insanity defense. On February 7, 2023, Lindsay Clancy was formally arraigned from her hospital bed. She faced 3 counts of first-degree murder, along with assault and battery with a deadly weapon. Prosecutors alleged premeditation, noting that she appeared to have researched methods for committing the murders and had locked doors to prevent interference. The prosecution argued that Lindsay knew what she was doing. She had retrieved resistance bands, methodically strangled each child, and then attempted suicide. Assistant District Attorney Jennifer Sprague said that Lindsay was lucid and purposeful in her actions and had shown awareness of their consequences. The state sought a high-security pretrial confinement once she recovered physically. Her defense attorney, Kevin Reddington, presented a starkly different picture. He argued that Lindsay was suffering from a rare but serious case of postpartum psychosis, rendering her incapable of distinguishing right from wrong. Reddington emphasized the psychiatric medications, the medical records, and the warnings she had voiced to her doctors and husband. He declared the case one of medical negligence as much as criminal law. Massachusetts law allows for a not guilty by reason of insanity plea if the defendant was unable to appreciate the nature or wrongfulness of their actions. The court ordered forensic psychiatric evaluations, and Lindsay was transferred to Duxbury State Hospital for continued mental health treatment while awaiting trial. The section details the legal framework surrounding the case, the opposing narratives, and the complex battle over accountability versus mental illness. Public and media reactions. News of the Duxbury tragedy spread quickly, with media coverage focusing on both the horror of the children's deaths and the emerging narrative of maternal mental illness. Initial public reaction was one of outrage, as many struggled to comprehend how a mother could commit such an act. However, as more information about Lindsay's postpartum psychosis and medical treatment became public, reactions shifted. Mental health experts and advocacy groups began calling for greater awareness of postpartum disorders, citing the Clancy case as a failure of the healthcare system rather than a story of pure evil. The case reignited debates about how society views mothers who commit violence. Some commentators drew parallels to the Andrea Yates case, while others highlighted the medicalization of criminal behavior, questioning whether mental illness could or should shield someone from punishment. Patrick Clancy, in an open letter to the public, made headlines when he expressed forgiveness for his wife. He wrote, "She loved our kids and never would have done anything to hurt them intentionally. I want her to have peace." His statement humanized Lindsay and reframed the discussion around tragedy rather than villainy. This section explores how the public, the media, and mental health communities responded to the case, from blame to sympathy and from fear to advocacy. Mental health reform and advocacy. The Clancy case triggered immediate calls for mental health reform, especially concerning maternal care. Lawmakers, mental health organizations, and the public demanded better screening and treatment for women suffering from postpartum mental disorders. Advocates highlighted the lack of standardized protocols for identifying postpartum psychosis, despite its known risks. Many hospitals treat postpartum depression but fail to monitor for signs of delusions, hallucinations, or suicidal ideation, which can rapidly escalate. The use of multiple psychiatric medications without proper oversight also came under scrutiny. The Postpartum Psychosis Prevention Act, proposed in Massachusetts in the wake of the Clancy case, aims to expand mental health education for new mothers, fund more inpatient psychiatric beds, and create a statewide early warning system for high-risk cases. It also calls for training for OB/GYNs and pediatricians to spot signs of psychosis and intervene earlier. Patrick Clancy's forgiveness and advocacy added momentum to these efforts. Instead of campaigning for punishment, he urged people to learn from his family's tragedy and help others avoid the same fate. "I want people to see what untreated postpartum psychosis can do," he said. This section outlines real-world policy efforts and reform initiatives launched in direct response to the tragedy. Legacy and ongoing case developments. As of 2025, Lindsay Clancy remains in psychiatric custody awaiting trial. She is partially paralyzed from her suicide attempt and continues to receive medical care. The court has not yet ruled on her mental competency to stand trial, but her defense team is expected to pursue a not guilty by reason of insanity plea. The case continues to evolve.